Hey guys, welcome back to today's video. Today is Sunday, December 6th, 2020, and today we're going to be taking a look at the new swing states following this election for the Democratic Party. So some states have actually shifted even more to the left than we actually expected in this election specifically. Now, almost every state did shift to the left, and that comes with a Joe Biden victory, but some of these states were already voting for the left, and some of them had even more significant shifts than the rest of the national average. A lot of states did shift, but not exactly by that large of margins. Even in states such as Georgia, we saw a shift of 5.4%, and that's actually comparable to the shift in two of the states that I'm mentioning, and an additional state that actually shifted by an even larger margin. Across the country, the overall average was a couple point or 3 to 4 point shift in favor of Joe Biden, but these states actually surpassed that, and the one state that doesn't was already in the Democratic column in 2016 by a pretty significant amount. So let's go ahead and get through them, and we'll compare them to how they've actually voted historically. I think that it's very interesting that some of these states are now returning to, not necessarily returning to, moving into a more strong identity towards a certain political party, which just means that if you're looking at the electoral map, these states may have been competitive. If you're looking at history, they may have been competitive before, but I think in future elections, they could actually move over into the safe column or be extremely, extremely likely that Democrats win them to a point where you would be saying, you know, there is no possibility that these states go to the Republican Party, at least immediately, unless there was a significant shift, as we saw very similarly to this election with Joe Biden and Donald Trump. But the first state I don't think comes as a shock. This is a state that actually I used to characterize as safe for the Democratic Party, but it's newly, moved in the safe Democratic column, and that is the state of Oregon. I know what you're thinking. Oregon, wasn't it already a safe Democratic state? Well, the answer is actually no. If we take a look at the historical election results in 2016, it only voted for Hillary Clinton by 11 points. That's comparable to some other states. Ohio was just 3 points less for Trump than Oregon was for Clinton. So keep that in mind as we go through it. Going to 2012, looking at that data as well, it went to Obama. Even Obama by 12.1%. In 2008, it was a little bit bluer because it was a very strong year for Obama, but this year it actually mimicked where Obama was in 2008, despite Biden not doing nearly as well. And then also in 2004, it was a 4.2% margin of victory for John Kerry. And then in 2000, it was decided by a mere 0.4%. So overall, this state has had a strong history of being a swing state up until Obama. It sort of returned back to being mildly competitive under Hillary Clinton. It was never really within striking distance for the GOP, but it was still important to note. And then this election, it comes around and says, they're going to swing a total of 5.1% in favor of Joe Biden to being a 16-point margin of victory for Joe Biden. And I think moving forward, especially since we're starting to see Democrats who are able to appeal to the white working class, I think that the Democratic Party will be able to carry Oregon by a very strong margin, if not a safe margin. Some of these other states I'm not going to say is going to be 15 points plus, but when I'm talking about a safe state now, these are states that are going to be somewhat out of reach for the GOP unless we see a year that was phenomenal for them, very similarly to 2016. And speaking of 2016, the next state I want to focus on is actually the state of New Mexico. This is a state that I think could very well end up in the likely, very high likely, if not safe Democratic column, given the current trajectory of the state. But in 2016, this state still voted for Hillary Clinton by 8.2% over Donald Trump in this state. And yes, there was a heavy third-party presence, but this election, it actually expanded, despite Joe Biden losing significant ground, not super significant, but marginal, but impactful ground amongst minority voters, specifically Hispanic voters in some of these areas, regions of the country shifting 50 to 55 points in favor of Donald Trump or the Republican Party comparatively to 2016 due to the increased Hispanic support amongst that area. Very, very notable, very, very large increase in some of these areas, but was counteracted by other Hispanic voters across the country, which overall ended up with shifts in the wrong states for the Democratic Party. But New Mexico actually shifted in favor of the Democrats this election by 2.6%. It moved in favor, and it was enough so that New Mexico voted for the Democratic Party by 11 points. I believe that's rounding up, so I believe it is 10.8%. But that's very important. This is a state that used to be, a target for Republicans in the past. Look at 2016, 8%. That was when it started to be, maybe it isn't going to be that way. Obama won it by 10 points. He was a one-in-a-lifetime candidate. New Mexico, 15 points. But in 2004, it went for George Bush. In 2000, it went narrowly for Al Gore by 0.1%. Even under, Clinton, when there was heavy third-party presence, Clinton couldn't even win it by 8 points in 1996, and in 1992, he only did barely better than his wife. So I think that looking at New Mexico, it was sort of on the radar for Democrats for Republicans in the past, but looking towards the future, I really don't see them making a play for this state. It's 5 electoral votes. It fundamentally wouldn't change the outcome of an election result unless it was exceptionally close, which actually might be a reality in future elections, but I think the Republican Party is probably going to try to direct attention away from this state, other than that House race in the 3rd District, and they also, the Democrats being them, also have all the means necessary to gerrymander New Mexico to being a completely 3 Democratic district, which is very possible. New Mexico, Oregon, they have been discussed. Well, the next state actually is still on this half of the United States, and it's the state of Colorado. This is a state that actually voted to the left of New Mexico in this election. Isn't that surprising? Voted for Clinton by 4.9% in 2012, voted for Obama by 5.4% in 2008, voted for Obama by 8 points. But none of that, even 2004, it went for Bush. 2000, it went for Bush as well. It was nowhere comparable to what Joe Biden did in this state, a 13.5% margin of victory. Super, super significant, double digits. Super large swing from 2016, an 8.6% swing from the 2016 election. 8.6%. This state is no longer going to be competitive for the Republican Party, at least in the immediate future, unless the Democratic Party is screwing up, which the Democratic Party arguably did in the Rust Belt in 2016. I don't think that they will. You know, the Democratic Party focused a lot of their efforts on retaining certain states. They funded money into Colorado. They funded money into New Mexico. They funded money into Minnesota and Virginia and New Hampshire because they needed to retain all these states. And I think that's the winning strategy for the Democratic Party, not taking any states for granted. The Rust Belt was what the Democratic Party took for granted, what the Republican Party thought was in reach in 2016, and only one party won it because of their persistence. You know, they took a 16-point Obama victory in 2008 in Michigan and turned it into a Donald Trump victory by less than a percentage point in 2016. And that was 8 years, and it shifted it 17 points in favor of the Republican Party. And not to say that Colorado couldn't be won by a Republican in the future. We've seen safe states turn blue and safe states turn red overnight practically. You know, take a look at 2004 to 2008. Take a look at Indiana and move that over into the Obama column. Super significant shift. But that's just one case. I mean, Colorado could very well be one of those, but in the current trajectory of the modern GOP, I don't think that is going to be the case. And also, the Democratic Party has realized they are not to take states for granted. So I think Colorado will be a state that is high likely, possibly even safe by the next election. This 13.5% margin, while a swing to Joe Biden is expected, was out of the ordinary in terms of how large this swing was, a 9-point swing from 2016. And the final state was an additional state that actually voted for a Democratic Party candidate by double digits for the first time since Lyndon B. Johnson. You know, over half a century has passed, and this is the first time it is voted for a Democratic Party by the Democratic Party in the presidential level by double digits. And it is the state of Virginia. We saw the swing from 2016, even when there was a Virginia senator running mate on the Clinton ticket, a 4.8% swing in this state. Let's look at election data in this state. It was never supposed to be competitive, number one, and it was never supposed to be solid for the Democrats. Even Obama won it by 3.9% in 2008. He won it by 6.3% in 2004. Bush won it by 8.2% in 2000. Bush won it by 8 points. Even under Clinton, he couldn't carry it. Went to Dole by 2 points. Went to Bush in 92 by 4.4%. So this has had a strong history of voting with the Republican Party. You know, even under Carter in 1976, when Texas went blue. When Georgia went blue by 34 points, Virginia still remained red. Has had a strong history voting for Republicans up until recently, and we thought, you know, you couldn't do better than Obama's 6.3% margin of victory. Well, you absolutely can. And Virginia voted for Clinton by 5.3%. This election voted for Biden by 10.1%. If this trajectory holds, if this shift holds, which it very well could, because we're starting to see Northern Virginia drive this state to the left significantly. Virginia will be another swing state to add on top of these, three as a future safe Democratic state, or now would be considered super high in terms of the likely margin, if not safe in the future election 2024 or 2028. We are going to be looking at these four states probably remain in the Democratic column for the next two elections at least. Not to say that they couldn't be won by a GOP candidate, but if the GOP candidate was to do it, they would need to be Obama-esque. They would need to be possibly even, Not necessarily Trump-esque, I wouldn't say, because Trump couldn't even win the states, but someone who was able to win over significant portions of a voting bloc, even more so than Trump did, and would have to be comparable to President Obama in terms of campaign tactics and in terms of ability, in terms of outreach to voters. So final recap here is that I believe in future elections, Oregon, Virginia, Colorado, New Mexico are now added onto the list as primary Democratic states that very well could vote for the Democratic Party in the future and very well will vote for the Democratic Party in the future. Not that they're 100% out of reach, but I would bet 99% of the time the Democrats are going to be winning here in the future. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to comment down suggestions below. Subscribe on the left if you haven't already, and check out the Instagram and Twitter. At the bottom left of the screen, there's also a Discord server for you to go ahead and join. On the screen, there's a video you can watch and then a playlist for my post-2020 election analysis videos. Again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all tomorrow.